in a Christian or religious home. The only time I heard about Jesus was from family or from, like distant relatives, or when my stepdad would hurt himself working on the car and he would, say Jesus Christ as an explicative. Never had any kind of, opinion. I knew that there was a God. I wasn't sure what I thought about it. Moved around a lot. Always struggled to fit in. Every time we moved somewhere new, I became like a chameleon, and I would try to fit in with this group and fit myself to make friends right away. And the last place we moved was in Southern California, which is kind of a cultural melting pot. And it was almost so diverse that I think that made it even harder for me to adapt, because there were so many different groups to try to fit in with. And so I found myself at kind of a loss. And I was sitting in math class, bell rang for lunch, and I just sat there because I had nowhere to go. I had no one to go hang out with. I was going to get my food and go sit by myself again. My math teacher, who I found out later was obviously a Christian, he was just kind of encouraging me. What's going on? What's happening? What's going on with your life? And I had a moment of tenderness, and I said, well, honestly, I'm just having a really hard time fitting in and making friends. And he said, in a very cheesy teacher way, there's a great group of kids that come into my room on Fridays. You should come in here, and I guarantee you some of those kids will be your friend. And so, as much as I really didn't want to do that because he made it sound horrible, I was really desperate, and so I showed up on Friday at lunch, and it was a Christian club. I walked into the door, and this tall Asian guy gave me a big hug and said, "Welcome, brother." And it was like, this is weird. What kind of club is this? And I was pretty sketched out initially. I almost left right then, but then I was like, no, it's too awkward. I'm going to stay. And so they talked about Jesus. I didn't pay attention. But what I did notice was just the affection that I got from the people and the welcoming attitude, and it was pretty rad. I still didn't give my life to Jesus, but I started doing Jesus things. I ended up becoming a chameleon with Christians. I was like, oh, this is a group I can adapt to. So I got a Bible with my name on it, King James, and started going to youth group and church every week, went to Christian concerts. I even got rid of all of my non-Christian music, and I wasn't even a believer yet. And then I met a girl at a concert, and she was a church girl. I thought she was really cute. We started dating. I started going to her youth group. We started having sex, and nobody knew that we were doing this. As a matter of fact, my youth pastor was even so impressed by my attendance. In every way, I looked and acted like a Christian, and he was actually going to make me a peer leader.
Run the rapper to a maze like an experiment. Run the rapper to a maze like an experiment. Run the rapper to a maze. Run the rapper to a maze. Run the rapper to a maze like an experiment.
My girlfriend got pregnant. She called me. It was at the end of my sophomore year, towards the end of that. It was a Monday. I remember that. It was 6 a.m. on a Monday. It's like the worst time of the week during the school year. And she said, I'm pregnant. For a split second, I thought that she was just trying to be manipulative and whatever. But then I realized that it was true, and then I'd come to accept that. On the way to school that day, I didn't feel like driving, so I asked my mom to take me. And I had this Christian radio station that I listened to all the time. And there was a song playing. In the chorus, it was saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And I knew that was from the Bible, and I knew the context of it. I'd already studied the Bible a lot. And I realized I'm not going to hear that unless I give my life to Christ completely. And so that day on the way to school, is when I first put my faith in Christ. And he changed me. towards the end of my junior year. I went through my whole senior year as a teenage dad. Spent time with her every day, worked, graduated, went to Bible college. Where my testimony kind of really starts to get crazy, I gave my life to Jesus and my life was changed. Broke up with the girlfriend, really started seeking God, not worrying about girls, focused on being a good dad. And I started praying crazy things like, God, send me somewhere. There's plenty of people here for the harvest. I want to go somewhere where I'm going to be needed a lot. Some crazy place like Wisconsin. And then I got a message on the Bible college message board a couple weeks after that from Idaho. And it was a buddy of mine that I had a class with. I barely knew. He called me and invited me to come up and intern at the church. Kind of laughed it off and said, yeah, I would pray about it. Then I started to get convicted. The Holy Spirit was making it pretty clear that it was time to take action on those prayers. And so I agreed to a summertime internship, came up here in May of '99. I got in on a Saturday, and then the youth pastor who invited me up had me teach a youth group on a Sunday. I barely knew him, he barely knew me. I'd never met anyone there. I'd never taught a youth group before. It was like just nuts. And while I'm there teaching them, and I'm still really tired from driving, a lot of the night before, I looked around and realized that I had been there before, to this youth room, downtown on Main Street. And I remembered one of those places I moved to all of those years was Twin Falls, Idaho. I lived in South Park for 10 months. And my friend invited me to church with him, to youth group, and I didn't want to go, and I remember going and hating it, and I realized that was the church where I first heard about Jesus, like a complete presentation of the gospel. And I realized, man, this is crazy. God brought me back to this place, of all places that I've lived. That was 1999. I ended up staying, moving Ashlyn up. I even moved her mom up so that she could be close to Ashlyn. Met my wife. She has a similar testimony, similar story. We got married. In 2002, I was ordained as the youth pastor. And to the month, I realized that it was 10 years after I first heard the gospel. I was filling the shoes of the guy who shared it with me. I was the youth pastor at Calvary Chapel, Twin Falls, where I first heard the gospel, which was pretty incredible. I like to share that part of my story because even where I'm at today, still doing ministry and loving people and loving youth, it all started with me being a troubled youth and God bringing me full circle, pouring into my life before I was even aware of his existence. And my life has never been the same, and God has used me to be a part of that same transformation happening with hundreds of other people. And it's been incredible. It's been a wild ride. And the guy who's putting together these videos is someone that I was able to pour into because someone poured into me. That's the power of God. He changes lives, and he can take things that otherwise would go to crap, to garbage, and make them beautiful. Yeah, that's my story.
Run the rapper to a maze like an X-ray. Run the rapper to a maze like an X-ray.